Welcome back to the We Guard Cleveland podcast with me, Casey. I know we haven't done a podcast or video or anything in a while, but baseball's starting up again, so we're going to be pumping out some more content. Before we start the video, I ask you to please like and subscribe. We need to keep getting more subscribers. We're thankful for all of you that are already subscribed. So now let's get into the video. So there's going to be three different parts to this podcast. We're going to first go over coaching changes that the Guardians have made this offseason. We're going to go over the roster construction for this year and position battles by position. So we're going to start off with part one, and we're going to go over the coaching. So this offseason, the Guardians hired head coach Stephen Vogt to replace Terry Francona. So Steven has some very big shoes to fill. He was a catcher in the league for a very long time, with multiple different organizations and teams. Last year, he was the bullpen coach for the Seattle Mariners, who had a very good bullpen last year. And I think he can help out our catchers and pitchers a lot. That's what he brings to the table a lot. So now I'm going to go over the rest of our staff. I'm not going to really go into detail about them because we don't have that kind of time here. But the Guardians bench coach is Craig Albernaz. The Guardians hitting coach this year will be Chris Valleca. The infield coach will be Rouglis Odor. The pitching coach will be Carl Willis. The assistant pitching coach will be Joe Torres. And our first base coach will be Sandy Alomar Jr. So that is our coaching staff for this year. So with this staff, you're probably wondering, do I think we will have to make any what changes will this staff make compared to Terry Francona and his staff? So here are the things that I expect to happen purely because of who they hired for next season. And I think Bo Naylor will take a big step as a catcher in all categories. I think the Guardians will be able to find who their true setup man is. It could be James Karinchak, it could be Trevor Stephan, it could be Scott Barlow. And which one of those guys will become our true setup man? I think one of them will be it, and I feel like the Guardians will be able to decide who has the best chance and really work to develop them. And the last one is I think the players are going to have lineup and defensive flexibility. So now those are my three big things that this coaching staff brings, and I'm going to talk a bit about each thing now. So first off, when I talked about Bo Naylor to take a big step in all categories, here's why. Bringing in Coach Stephen Vogt, who was a catcher. Sandy Alomar Jr., who is on our Guardian staff, was a great catcher for the Cleveland Guardians. And we also have a very good hitting coach in Chris Valleca. I think these three guys can really work to get the most out of Bo Naylor. I feel like they can turn him into an Adley Rutschman type player. I think that the development of Bo Naylor is a big reason why they brought in these coaches. And I really think that he could hit .250 with 20 homers and become a top 10 defensive catcher with this staff. So I have very high expectations for Bo Naylor this year. The next thing is, I said the Guardians need to find a true setup man, which is what I think this staff can do. Ever since Bryan Shaw left the Guardians, they have been looking for a true setup man in the 7th and 8th innings. They've tried James Karinchak and Trevor Stephan. Neither of those guys have been able to keep that job for very long. They both have shown they're really good at times, but then they go on cold streaks and hot streaks. They're very inconsistent, and they're not consistent enough to be that setup man yet. And then the Guardians also brought in Scott Barlow during the offseason to try to compete for that job. I think all of these guys have the talent to be a setup man. So Coach Stephen Vogt and Coach Carl Willis are very good coaches, and I think they can work with these three guys and figure out who the best option is and train them to become a really good setup man. So now we're moving on to the third thing I said, which is an interview. Was given to us in an interview with Stephen Vo. So far in interviews with Coach Vo, we have heard that he wants players to have flexibility in the lineup and on defense. He has stated that multiple times in his interviews that that's one of the things that he asks of them. He hasn't really gave us too many hints on any other changes, but I just wanted to bring that up. I'm not going to talk about it in too much detail, but I want to bring up that they may change the lineup more often than Coach Tito Francona did. He pretty much went with the same lineup most of the time. I think Coach Vo might change it up a little bit more. So now we're on to part 2 in the video, which is roster construction. So the Guardians have announced who their spring training roster will be. They have their first spring training game today against the Cincinnati Reds. So I'm going to go over that and where the depth chart stands right now. So right now our starting rotation looks like Shane Bieber, Tristan McKenzie, Tanner Bybee, Gavin Williams, and Logan Allen. That's pretty much set. There's no really position battles there. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's going to be most likely our rotation. But I'm just going to give these other guys honorable mentions who are trying to prove that maybe if one of these pitchers gets hurt, they could be the best option in AAA. And that is Daniel Espino, Hunter Gaddis, Tyler Beatty, Tanner Burns, Carlos Carrasco, Jack Leftwich, and Adam Oler. So that's for the starting pitching. And then the same thing with our relief pitching. Our pitching is pretty much set. We know who we want. We know who we intend on having as our pitchers to start the year. However, if pitchers start struggling or we need to make changes, we should still recognize who the top options are. But for the bullpen, I would say right now our closer is going to be Emmanuel Clase. Our setup men are going to be Scott Barlow and Trevor Stephan. Our middle relief pitchers are going to be Eli Morgan, James Karinchak, and Sam Hentges, and Nick Sandlin. And our long relief pitcher is probably going to be Xavier Curry. And then the guys who, again, are going to be competing to be the top option if one of the guys gets hurt are Tim Herron, Ben Lively, Joey Cantillo, Cade Smith, Franco Alaman, Anthony Banda, Jamie Barria, Nick Enright, Anthony Gose, Mason Hickman, and Tyler Zuber. So now we're moving on to catcher, which our catchers are very set too, I would say. We have Bo Naylor and Austin Hedges. I think they're going to be our two catchers we take on the roster. But the guys who are going to be fighting for that position and to be our top guy in AAA are going to be Michael Berglund, Brian Lavastida, Dom Nunez, and Eric Rodriguez. So first base, our starting first baseman is going to be Josh Naylor. However, we do not know who our backup first baseman is going to be. It could be in a competition between any of these 5 guys. It could be Tyler Freeman. It could be... Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I did not mean to say that. I meant to say Davision De Los Santos, Gabriel Arias, David Fry, Kyle Manzardo, Micah Praz. Sorry I said Tyler Freeman. I was looking at the wrong list. But anyways, any of those 5 guys could be our backup first baseman, and they're competing in camp. We obviously know that Josh Naylor is going to be our starter. I would say probably the lead guy right now to be the backup is David Fry, just because he was on our team last year and he did a pretty good job, and he is very flexible and can play multiple positions, including being that backup first baseman. So I think he's the leading candidate, but Gabriel Arias, Davision De Los Santos, Kyle Manzardo, if they really work hard in spring training, I think that spot is pretty open. So next is second base. We know our starting second baseman is Andres Jimenez. For our utility man, whoever that is, will be our backup second baseman. For that utility position, there are a lot of different guys competing, such as Tyler Freeman, Gabriel Arias, Juan Brito, Angel Martinez, Jose Tina, Division De Los Santos, and then Tyler Freeman, who's probably the top option. But that's really for the backup for second, short, and third. But yeah, overall, I feel like Tyler Freeman is probably the leading candidate to be our utility infielder. Okay, shortstop's the hard one because this position is wide open. Any of these 5 guys could be our starting shortstop, or two of these guys will be our starter and backup at shortstop. We don't know who our shortstop's going to be, so it's a pretty much open competition. So whoever's the utility infielder, but for out of these guys, and then one will probably be our starting shortstop. But the candidates are Brayan Rocchio, Gabriel Arias, Juan Brito, Tyler Freeman, and Jose Tina. I would say probably the top 2 options right now are Brayan Rocchio and Gabriel Arias going into spring training. However, I think if Freeman or Jose Tina has a really good spring training, they could steal this job from one of those guys. So, yeah. So, next is third base. We know Jose Ramirez is going to be our starting third baseman. Our utility man will be our backup. I'm not going to really go into that. I mean, the other guys competing for it are just kind of the same ones I've said for other positions at this point. So, but we know Jose is going to be the third baseman, so we don't need to talk about that. In left field, we know our starting left fielder is going to be Steven Kwan. There's really not much competition there. I mean, our backup outfielders will just rotate. So I'm going to talk a little more about that next. Center field is open this year. We don't know who our starting center fielder is going to be. Myles Straw had a very bad year last year. Yes, he's the leading candidate, but there are a lot of guys who are going to be competing to take his job, including Ramon Laureano, Will Brennan, Estevan Fourier, who we traded for this offseason, George Valera, and Petey Halpin. So that position is wide open. On individual position battles, that might be a different video for another day, or we'll talk a little bit about that later in this video. But center field is one of the 3 positions where we're going to have a really big battle to figure out who it is. So then in right field is the other position, which is wide open, and there's even more guys competing for this job. We have Will Brennan, Ramon Laureano, Gabriel Arias, Estevan Fourier, David Fry, Jonkinson Noel, Jonathan Rodriguez, and George Valera. So that's the roster construction part. So now I'm going to go into part 3, which is the big position battles, which are shortstop, center field, and right field. So I kind of told you who's competing. Now I'm going to tell you who my top option would be going in. This is if I was the coach. I don't know. It's not what I think they're going to do. This is what I would do. So my starting shortstop out of all these guys who I like the best, I would say is Brayan Rocchio. Brayan Rocchio is a switch hitter. He's a very good fielder. His weakness is he can't play multiple infield positions. But that's why he needs to be our regular shortstop. He can't be a utility man. So I feel like he is good enough to be that starting shortstop. So I think we're going to keep him. We should keep him in that role and have him do that. In center field, I think to start the season, we should probably stick with Myles Straw. But again, if he starts struggling, I'm willing to bring a bunch of guys up. I've seen Petey Halpin and George Valera play for in Double-A. They're both decent. Estevan Fourier, I don't know too much about him, but again, I think if we just try new guys in there and just see who's good, once we figure out if Straw can bounce back or if he can't. And in right field, to be honest with you, I know there's a lot of options, but there's no option that really strikes me a ton. I got a feeling that at the trade deadline this offseason, we may make a trade for a power-hitting right fielder because that is what I feel we need. Alright, but that's it for today's video. Please like and subscribe for more content. I have 3 different videos planned for this week, so as long as you keep getting those views up and we keep getting likes and subscribers, I will keep making this content. Tell your friends about this channel. We love more views the better. So, thank you guys, and for now, Casey is out.